Can you just tell me a little bit about why you got into viewing Twitch in the first place?
So when it came to sort of Twitch, it was the start of sort of last year, but in a sense also the start of Christmas time. So going away, sort of as you've mentioned with Queenie. Before that, I mainly watched the Ogscast for streaming because it was what my friend was really into at the time. And during Christmas, they were doing the Jingle Jam charity stuff that they always do. So I was like, I know all these people already anyway. It's like the streamers that I've always gotten along with in a sense. So I'll go and watch that. It's always fun Jingle Jam stuff. So that was the sort of the edge in a sense that sort of pushed me towards it. I have had viewing of Twitch in the past, sort of like this was way back in the day with Overwatch when that first came out. So sort of like I really wanted to play it, but with the whole beta situation, you couldn't play it until you got the closed beta key, and never came, unfortunately. But
I got mine. I was very lucky in that.
Lucky for some.
Do you play it now? Do you play Overwatch now?
No.
Yeah, me neither. Funny that.
I'm really excited for it. Got the collector's edition and everything. Didn't play it.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
Yeah. Oh dear.
Anyway.
Back in the day, with ignorance is bliss.
Oh, the best.
But yeah. So it started with that, and then as I got into January, February time, it got to watching just Sips and Pyrian Flax, which are also Yogscast members, but I watched them because they were playing Escape from Tarkov at the time. And I was just sort of like, watch that, and it's something to watch whilst I'm working and passes the time kind of thing. It wasn't as common as sort of like I do now, because during then I was still going to work every now and then, and whilst before the pandemic I did have 3 days in office, 2 days out, it was sort of like you could be lax with it still, so you'd have at least 1 or 2 days in office, but you'd mostly stay at home. Because I'm, like I say, I'm a programmer, so to me, I can stay at home and be perfectly all right. So after that, it was the lockdown and everything went to crap for everyone. So then obviously Valorant came out after that, and Valorant sort of piqued my interest a bit like Overwatch did, where it was sort of like, oh, everyone's sort of playing it, and it's got a lot of streamer attention, and they're giving away free keys for when the game launches in the beta. So I was like, you know what, might as well give it a watch and see what it's all about and everything. So that was when I went back to the person I'd watched during Overwatch. So I used to be a mod on his channel and everything. It's quite big in his community, called Valkyr. I don't know if you've heard that name from Queenie or not, but
I've almost very close to working with Valkyrie, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I've had quite a few conversations with him. He's a really nice guy.
He's a good guy. I really like him. I still occasionally go and hop into his channel and be like, hey, how's everything going and all that. And it's always sort of like nice to see when he's working with bigger streamers such as Sips, like he did the other day with the zombies. And I was really, like, every time something like that happens for him, I'm always really happy, because it's like, yes, we don't really talk as much, but I knew him quite close, and we were good friends. So, but I found out about Queenie through him, and then found out after I'd gotten my Valorant key, that Queenie also got hers, and she was playing it. So I was like, okay, well, I've been struggling with dysphoria for quite a little bit at that point, and that's when I went, you know what, I'll watch Queenie for a bit and see what she's like, despite following her on Twitch for like 4 years prior. So I watched her on Twitch, and it was sort of like, from there, it was like, actually, this is actually really helpful. It makes me calmer and feel a lot more sort of included as a person in the community, and obviously immediately being seen as who you are, because I've never really properly interacted with her before. So it was nice to have that sort of thing. It helped deal with the dysphoria that I had and all that kind of stuff. So and from there, it's sort of evolved and grown. So
yeah, so I mean, she's really open about her being on the spectrum, like the autistic spectrum. You know, she's probably talked about that in one of her streams before you decided to be more of an active member. Did her openness about what she deals with. Obviously, gender dysphoria and being on the autistic spectrum is completely different, but it's still about being open about kind of who you are
Yeah.
and what you deal with. So, was there a moment when you were watching her, or did it like where you were just like, that's somebody who I want to,
I
get to
think
know and be a part of, or was it a gradual kind of thing of
Yeah,
like
I
more
think
and more
it's more of a
watching?
gradual thing rather than a one open shut point kind of thing. Um, I think a lot of it was also helped by the fact that her fiance I ended up watching on Twitch as well, because obviously she's like, "Hey, my fiance is streaming," kind of thing. So I was like, I'll just go watch him as well whilst he plays Valorant as well at the same time. And so I also got watching him, but because he was small at the time, and to be fair, he still is, because he doesn't really stream full time like Queenie does or anything like that. So, and we got talking about Escape from Tarkov in his chat at one point, and we were like, "Oh, I've got it as well. We can all get it and play it one day. It'll be quite fun." So he got it, and we all like downloaded it and played it. Obviously, that meant I had to share who I actually was and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it actually happened at that time. I think he knew prior that I was transgender, but it wasn't sort of like anything we really properly talked about. And that was the first proper moment where it's sort of like, yes, that's who I actually am, kind of thing. So obviously you've got to use your voice and all that. And it's at that point quite obvious for me, because I'd not done any proper voice training. So
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have had this really interesting kind of arc in the type of entertainers that you watch. Starting off in Yogcast, who were and still are like this conglomerate of streamers and entertainers, absolutely massive within the UK. And then you went to, still, really big size like Valkyrie, but maybe more kind of middle ground. And then you go kind of further on to these streamers like Queenie and her fiance. Do you find
yeah.
do you find yourself now, having gone from bigger streamers to smaller streamers, do you enjoy the atmosphere of these smaller streams more? Do you find yourself watching that more? Do you still go back to these big channels and still watch their content?
Yeah. So still go back to the bigger channels nowadays and all that kind of stuff. I've even sort of expanded what bigger channels I watch, for example. So I was like, I recently, well, not I say recently, but I started getting into Rabs as well, who's also a member of the Yogscast. You'll start to see that theme. Most of the bigger ones I watch are Yogscast, because I like the dynamics and stuff. So, but I got into Rabs about 2 or 3 months ago now, just before Jingle Jam, I think. So November time. So it was sort of like, that was just because I was bored one day and I was like, oh, Rabs is streaming, so sort of I'll check it out. And I enjoyed his way he did his streams, and he was, despite his size, he's still quite interactive with his chat, so it was still able to send a message and get a response and all that kind of stuff. And I think that to me is kind of why I enjoy those smaller streamers, is because of the sort of interaction you get in chat. So it makes you feel more involved in the content. So whilst I enjoy YouTube a lot, and I'd say it's still probably more than Twitch, and mainly because I can just sit and watch, I think when it comes to Twitch content, it's sort of like, because it's just one long stream of gameplay, it's sort of like I need to have that sort of extra interaction and stuff like that. So, but when it comes to that, it's like I will tend to stick more towards smaller streamers, but I will sort of spread out and go to larger ones as well, and even to a point where even ones that don't interact with chat too much, such as another Yogs one, but Leo's as well. She doesn't sort of interact with the chat as much, but still enough, kind of thing. It's sort of like, it varies depending on how I'm feeling at the time, what sort of content I'd want. So, but then obviously, usually I will probably go and watch Queenie while she's streaming for at least an hour or two, kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have quite an interesting way that you approach streamers and become a part of their communities. Because I imagine, and I myself am one, I don't typically go into a streamer's stream and like start interacting with people. And I guess the question is your aim to, obviously, if you like their content and you kind of seem to like who they are, do you always go into a stream with the idea of like, if I like this person, I'm going to be an active part of their community? Or
it's kind of hard to say, because it's like I don't sort of interact with the community outside of the stream for most people. The biggest extent of that is probably Queenie. So, and even then, it's like at most it's not too commonly. I will get involved in things, but it's not sort of like too big kind of thing. It's occasionally pop into the Discord and say hello to someone that's put a message in there or something, but most of the time I won't sort of interact too much outside of the actual Twitch chat. And it's the same with most streamers, but then even then it's sort of like a lot of the time I will just more sort of lurk in the background and sort of be there watching the content, but still enjoy the interactions that other people get, and then occasionally put in a chat and that here or there kind of thing. So it's one of those things where it's sort of like I will definitely watch for how they act and interact with chat, as you said, but it's not more for me, but for more how they interact with everyone else and how that can sort of make more comedic moments and stuff like that, make it more enjoyable.
So say if you went into a stream and the streamer's having a bad day, will that encourage you just to vent about your feelings? Or if they're talking about what they're grateful in life, for example, will that encourage you to think, how reflective is your thinking off of the person that you're watching?
I would definitely sort of say, sort of like, it's hard to put into words, I guess. In a sense, it's sort of like, if they're having a bad day, it depends on how they're having a bad day, I guess. If it's like, if you're coming in, it's like, and it's a streamer that I interact with quite a bit, and it's like, so say for example Queenie, and she's not had a great day and she's had like been a bit rough and stuff like that. It's one of those sort of points in time where I think as much as you can't really do too much as a viewer, obviously, in the whole parasocial relationship stuff as well, it's sort of like you want to sort of like encourage them and make them know, hey, this is what you can, that what you do for us, and encourage them in that sort of way. But it's like outside of that, there's not too much you can do to, in a sense, support them, I guess. So it's sort of like you can try and show that you care, but you can't show too well that you do as well. It's finding the right balance, because but even then, it's sort of like when they are having a bad day, and as you said, are having a moan about it kind of thing, if they encourage the sort of people to get involved and have a moan, then I would myself. But up until that point, it's sort of like, unless it's sort of like prompted, I tend to keep it more towards myself in a sense, because I don't want to ruin anything or take something away from them when they need it kind of thing or anything like that. It's more out of sort of consideration, I guess, in a sense. There are times where I have sort of been sort of open about things that have happened or something like that, but at the same time it tends to be few or far between, because I tend to use, if something like that happens, I tend to confide more with my friends. So rather than going into a big stream chat and doing something like that, if it's something that's good that's happened though, then that's completely different. I will come in there, and if they are having a nice time and being happy and stuff like that, I'll mention it, just because, hey, why not just boost the mood even more kind of thing. So, and it makes everyone else happier and stuff like that. So it's always nice seeing someone else come in there and do the same thing as well. So
yeah,
why not return the favor kind of thing.
I think, how do you what's your thoughts and feelings on kind of relationships between viewers and streamers, being on the side of a viewer? Like, how would you see, or how do you feel that kind of dynamic relationship is? Because obviously you're interacting with each other, and that's something unique to Twitch, because with YouTube there's no live interaction. With radio, with television, unless you like phone up and call in, which they do encourage, you have less actual interaction. So can you just try and kind of articulate how Twitch's audience and entertainers relationship is unique in some way to other platforms?
Yeah, so I guess in a sense it's sort of like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it into words.
Like I said, it's kind of hard to articulate.
It's hard, yeah, it's very hard. But I guess in a sense it's sort of like, there's obviously that sort of emotion there where you do feel like you can consolidate in them with certain things and stuff like that. But at the same time, you've got to occasionally be like, no, like, no, they're not your friends. They are sort of an entertainer. But at the same time, it's sort of like you do know that they are there to entertain, and realistically, they aren't your friend as per se. But I would say the best way to describe it is more an acquaintance, a work friend potentially is a way I'd put it. So it's sort of like you won't tend to go out of your way to interact with, like, unless it's a rare occurrence, which some people do have, but you won't tend to go out of your way to interact with workmates or stuff like that. You tend to just interact with them at work. You'll still vent certain things to them and stuff like that. And I think that's the best sort of comparison you can get between streamer and viewer, because whilst there's obviously different boundaries there and different sort of ways you go about speaking to each other and what you talk about, at the end of the day, it's still a similar sort of relationship I see. So it's sort of like I will interact with my boss, for example, with like saying, "Oh, what we've been up to in these past couple of weeks, what sort of like games we've been playing, and all that kind of stuff." It's all there, like you are friends, but at the same time, you're not friends. You're just work friends, acquaintances, that kind of thing. So I think it's very present to be similar like that with Twitch. So
I think that's a really interesting way to put it, actually, because, like, say if you go for an interview, like, you're going to be interviewed by probably whoever's going to be managing you, so you can kind of get a test of whether you would want to work under them. That's something you get to choose. But when you accept that job, you don't typically accept who you'll be working with. So it's like when you first go into a streamer's chat or like view them, it's almost like that interview of like, do I like this streamer? Like, I can control whether I want to watch this person or not. But there are other people in the community you don't so much have a choice of. You just have to hope that kind of like-minded people, or I mean, if you're gonna find the same streamer entertaining, you'll have qualities of the kind of the same, so you'll get along with them. So I think that's a really interesting way to put it, actually. And that comes on to, so you're transitioning, and I would love for you to talk a bit about how streams and kind of maybe the anonymity of it, or the fact that it's online has helped you kind of come to that, like, deal with that and come through with that.
So for me, like for myself, I first realized that I was transgender about more than 2 years ago now. It was coming on to 3 years, actually. It was May 2018, so, or maybe April 2018, around that sort of time frame. And at the time, I didn't particularly watch too much Twitch. I occasionally watched a Final Fantasy XIV streamer, but that was the biggest extent I went to, that kind of thing. So a lot of that in the early days was interacting with my friends and just sort of more exploring and stuff like that, making sure it's the right thing and stuff like that. At that point in time, you notice that dysphoria is there and that sort of thing is all present, but it tends to be weaker, I guess, in a sense. And as you sort of move on from that sort of date where you have originally found out that you are transgender, you tend to find that dysphoria gets worse as time moves on, because it's sort of like you've known for that amount of time now. Despite, like, before that, yes, the effects were there. Yes, obviously I've had the effects of it all and that kind of stuff throughout my teen years and everything, until I realized it didn't really change too much. I just thought it was standard sort of depression kind of thing, anxiety, that kind of stuff. But then once I realized, it then started to get worse over time, in a sense. So now it's a lot worse than it was prior, nearly 3 years ago. But I think with streams and stuff like that, especially during the lockdown, it's offered that sort of a chance to be able to go, hey, I'm just come in as a girl for me, and obviously for others it's been a guy. I know I think there's multiple trans people in Queenie's chat, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that one. I know I'm not the only one, though. but it's sort of like I'm sure they also have a similar sort of experience as with me, where it's sort of like being able to go in there and just chat about things that have been on your mind, or potentially even ask for advice, for example. That for me, it's sort of like when she's doing her makeup stuff, it's helpful for me to go, hey, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? It's obviously you don't try and push too much because that you don't want to make the stream about a makeup tutorial, because that's not what they're there to do. They're there to be sort of helpful, but it's sort of like it gives you ideas on how to use makeup and stuff like that. So, for example, as you've probably seen, Queenie really likes her sort of flicks off the eyebrow with her. Forgot the name of the makeup now that you use for eyeliner. That's the one. And then I found another streamer who also does a similar thing, and I'm like, sat there now, and I'm like, it's a really nice style. I really like that. And I thought that originally when I first started watching Queenie, it's little things like that where you sort of start to realize, oh, this is the sort of look I would like to have, and it helps you in that sense where it builds a character for you. You take something from someone else like you do normally anyway, but in a sense, it just helps do that because it gives you a sort of, in a sense, a role model, but not. I guess it's hard to put it into words.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
that's the sort of thing I go for. Yeah.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong. So you initially obviously went into the stream for entertainment purposes,
Mm-hmm.
and then would it be fair to say that a large reason of why you stay around is because Queenie almost acts as that, for lack of a better way to put it, as like that girlfriend kind of figure in your life? I don't know if you had that before, or if maybe that's something that you found in Queenie that you were lacking in your life.
Yeah, kind of in a sense, yeah. I would certainly say it's sort of like it would more be towards sort of, in a sense, someone to look up to, I guess. It allows me to be able to go, well, this is what Queenie does. Maybe that's a regular sort of thing. It's like, so it allows me to be able to just go, well, it's something to draw inspiration from, and be able to go, well, I like this sort of thing that she goes for. Why don't I take it and do a similar thing and make it into my own thing, kind of thing? Obviously, that's sort of a thing, like say that, well, like I've said, like you do with most people anyway, but it's definitely helpful for having that streamer there to be able to go, yes, that it's a sort of thing that I can pull from them and go, yeah, that sounds good for me as well. So
when you went through those lonely stages and you felt alone even when you're surrounded by people, what kind of things did you turn to help combat that?
So back in when I didn't watch Twitch as much, I stuck to more Discord in a sense. Final Fantasy 14, once again, bastion of my life at this point. Savior, really, I should say. But it's I definitely turned to that because it allowed me to express myself a lot more than in real life during university. Because obviously I can come out to my close group of friends, but at the end of the day, there's so many more people at university and stuff than just your close group of friends. But I think Final Fantasy was definitely the biggest help for that, and then in turn also on top of that, Discord servers and stuff where I was able to be who I was. But especially during this year, as much as Discord and Final Fantasy has helped with that in the past, Twitch has also helped. And I know, like you say, don't say it because of that, but no, I think on a genuine basis that Twitch has helped because it allowed me to be able to go, well, now what I'm struggling isn't more towards figuring out who I am and dealing with those new pains that I've finally figured out, but more, how can I become the person I want to be, and leading that sort of front instead. And I think going to Twitch has helped that, especially with people like Queenie, where she's quite happy to just do streams where she puts on her makeup or just talks about a day and how things vary and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. I think it helps a lot because it's sort of like it allows me to, like I've said before, build a character in her that's similar to me, and pull inspiration from it. It's hard to say, obviously, because you don't want to seem like this weird obsessive person when you're not, kind of thing. But like, I think being able to pull characteristics and stuff that I know are present in her that are similar to mine, and take inspiration and stuff like that for other little bits and bobs, it's definitely helpful. I think it has changed my personality a little bit as well, but I don't think too much, because ultimately I've still had so many years of my own past experience where it's sort of like, to change that would be impossible now. And especially during university, I've made my own, with my own friends and stuff. We have our own unique humor at this point, to say the least. So, but yeah.